Hello and welcome to episode number 92 of the WP Café show with myself, Mark Wilkinson, and my co-host here, Keith Devon. Thank you for joining us in this weekly WordPress chat. We are a WordPress agency and product builder. We chat about the things that we've been doing and obviously all of the stuff that we see in the WordPress ecosystem in terms of news, views, and discussion points. So thanks for joining us. If you are joining us live here on YouTube or on X, then please get in the comments, say hello, say who you are, where you're listening from. It's nice to see who is joining us. I think we've probably got a lot of people at WordCamp Europe today, so we might have a slightly smaller audience, but we'll still give it a go anyway. So how's your week been, Keith?
It's been good. I have been getting my head into design again, which I'm actually really excited about. So we're building this school website. And yeah, I've got to design it. I've got to design it with probably the site editor, well, definitely the block editor in mind. But yeah, it's been fun. So I've been just trying to find some inspiration. So I put a tweet out like saying, have any good school websites that they know of. And so I had looked through some of those, and someone actually recommended another web agency's portfolio because they do quite a lot of schools. So yeah, lots of good stuff in there, and they are WordPress websites, which is quite cool as well. So yeah, just collecting ideas and inspiration, and starting to kind of think about how we might actually build some of it and turn it into a CMS that's useful for the school. So I'm super excited about it all. I'm also actually really quite excited about the challenge of trying to use kind of modern WordPress tools, the site editor, and how we're going to wrangle that into something that works for us and ultimately for the client.
Yeah, that's been my challenge this week, trying to figure out how we can do a few of the things that we took for granted maybe in the normal.
Yeah, I feel like recent times we've been missing a bit of challenge. You know, we've been in kind of maintenance and support mode because of all of our product work.
Yeah.
And it's not like big chunky, how are we going to achieve this, and like actually creating something. So I'm ready for it. I'm definitely ready for it. I'm looking forward to it. Good. I'm sure it's going to be highly frustrating, but hopefully ultimately satisfying. We'll see where we get to. How about you? How have you been?
Yeah, good.
Almost won a golf tournament yesterday.
I did. I left the clubhouse at lunchtime. No, it was when did I was here about 10 o'clock, so I must have left about 2 o'clock, and I was in the lead. And then it started chucking it down, and a gale was blowing. So I thought I might have a chance, but today someone's picked me by a shot. So I came second. It was a good round. So
yeah,
got to be happy with that. Yeah. But yeah, in the WordPress world of things, I've been looking at just kind of like recapping on like what's happening with full site editing and what's available and what you can do now that you perhaps couldn't do sort of like 12 months ago when we sort of like maybe last kind of looked at it, which is interesting. Just been doing a little experimenting, getting a local install set up and just playing with what's there, like, and playing with WordPress 6.6 beta 2, I think it's 2, whatever the latest beta is, because that's got some new toys in there that we might want to use, particularly the synced pattern overrides. We've talked about them before. They look like they could be potentially useful to us. And then some good discussion on X, Twitter, about ways to go about things, which I'm sure we'll get into. So yeah, it's been an interesting week. Looking forward to the weekend. But yeah, so let's get stuck in. Hi to Paul, Cameron, Nick, Isaac, and Dan. Thanks for joining us. All said hello in the chat. If you haven't, then let us know who you are and where you're from. It'd be nice to see who's with us. So the first topic we've got is the future of themes in WordPress. Yeah. Now, we've kind of touched on this before, but I know this was kind of your topic because of something you were replying to on Twitter. Do you want to explain where that went and how we got to this topic of coming up again?
Yeah, I mean, this is a question. Like, what is a theme? What is the future of themes? It's a kind of ongoing question for me. I don't I don't really kind of understand maybe where we're at right now with it, and I don't really understand where we're going with it. To be honest, like looking back, I mean, a theme could be so many different things. You know, there's in classic WordPress land, you know, a theme could just be simply how someone's blog is styles, like typography and colors, blah blah blah, template layouts and stuff like that. But it can also be full feature. You know, a theme could be like there's in the recruitment world, there's job board themes that have a lot of functionality. So I think what a theme is has always been a bit blurry. But then kind of the Gutenberg project came around and people were saying, you know, in the future we won't need themes. And like I've constantly been really confused by that. And something came up. Actually, I don't have the original tweet. But Kevin Geary posted something on X that kind of riled me a little bit. I think maybe I misinterpreted it. But basically saying that hang on, I wonder if I can find it quickly.
Trying to find it now.
Yeah. I've had a bit of activity in my on my Twitter recently, so it's kind of got to scroll back through. No, I don't know if I'm going to find that one.
I can't find it either.
But he said something, and there was a bit of back and forth about themes and what themes are. And I thought he was saying that you basically don't need themes anymore. And he never really clarified what he was saying. But I think what he was saying is the classic implementation of themes is kind of dead, and we need to kind of embrace the new way of doing things. I'm not actually sure. It seemed like he was just posting a bit of an inflammatory comment just to get a bit of engagement. That's kind of how it felt, and I totally fell for the bait.
He's right in the way like themes are changing, aren't they? Definitely, I think.
Yeah,
I mean, for me, a theme. What did a theme always do? It provided a few things, but essentially, it provided the layout for your templates and it styled them.
Yeah,
essentially, and themes started to throw other things in, didn't they? And bits of functionality and all sorts of stuff. But essentially, it provided a series of templates that were HTML templates with logic in them, and then the theme would style them using a style sheet. That's usually what they did. And actually, that's kind of what they do now, really. You get a bunch of patterns or templates or whatever that they're done differently now, but they still can provide layouts for your templates, and it can still style them in a way.
Yeah.
The way in which you style them is slightly changed. We're telling blocks, we're not styling. But essentially, that's what it is. So someone who comes along and says, you know, I'm not a designer, I can't design a site, and I want to go and find something that looks good, that's still what a theme does, really, I think.
Yeah.
So in many ways, they haven't really changed. It's just the way in which the theme implements those things has changed. You know, maybe there's less PHP templates, so HTML templates, etc. The technology's changing the way it's been delivered.
Yeah. But I feel like there is a movement in WordPress towards we don't need themes because people can do it themselves. Maybe I'm wrong, but that feels like the language and the kind of direction of the tooling. It's like, we're not going to need themes because people can choose from these colors and these typefaces and font sizes, and then they can just chuck a whole load of patterns at a page, and they can just create their own website. Why do we need themes anymore? And I don't know if that is what people are saying, but it feels like it. And my point is that people don't want to have to make color. Like, some people don't want to have to make typographic decisions and color palette decisions and pattern decisions that, like, they're not good at design. So we need a design starting point for people that want to set up their blog or their small company website without being a designer, and it looks good. And that's why, like, the classic themes, because you couldn't really edit much about them until the customizer came along and you started to be able to do a little bit more. But you just like, that's a nice design, I'll use that. And it kind of stayed a nice design. And now it's like, well, you can change all the stuff, which is kind of cool, but we still need that kind of. I think we still need that starting point.
Because if we didn't have themes, and like WordPress shipped with like a default skeleton theme, which was just empty, and everyone started from scratch because you can do it yourself.
Yeah,
I just think people wouldn't like WordPress. They want a starting point. They want. I'm talking most people here. I'm not talking everybody. Like we'll start with a blank theme for building this website, but most people who go and get a WordPress site aren't that. They're just someone that says, oh, "I love that looking design. I'll have that theme." And then they might change the font, or they might do that. But
interesting what you said there is like we'll start with a blank theme and we'll make changes. I guess the point is that we won't start with a blank theme. Like there is no theme. Like potentially, like we are just customizing WordPress. We're not like building someone a custom theme that is an actual entity. Like, it's a complete customization of WordPress using WordPress's core tools rather than something that kind of almost sits to the side of WordPress, which is what a kind of classic theme was. So I think maybe that's what kind of Kevin's getting at. We're not going to have like install theme X or theme Y from a theme library. It's something a little bit different. That and definitely for us building client websites, we're kind of just customizing something for a one-off use case. But yeah, the other tweet that that was relevant to this week, which is why it's a topic today, is Rich Tabor. Loads of respect for Rich. He does really amazing. He's just an amazing designer, a great communicator. He put a post up again on X. He said, "This is the future of WordPress themes. 720 styles composed of 2 choices, your favorite color set and your favorite font set." And he shows this lovely little video of basically the same page with the different colorways and the different typographic treatments. And I'm just like, that is not a theme. Like that is part of a theme. Like, but all of those like he shows 7 examples in his little video, and they're very similar. Like for me, a theme, there's more to a theme than that, and then just like letting the client do the rest. Or the website owner do the rest. I think there needs to be more curation, and I think one of the arguments is that, well, WordPress users, site owners are going to have this like massive pattern library that they can access, and they can drop this pattern in that, and they can just create things that they want to create from scratch. And I went on the pattern library today, and it's garbage. It's like, even as a designer, I wouldn't know how to try to find 2 patterns that kind of look semi-coherent on a page is just kind of impossible. I just think we still need curated design experiences, and so yeah, I just think it'll be interesting where that goes. Like Frank jumped in as well. He retweeted Frank Klein. Yeah, he retweeted Rich's post. He said, "This is not the future of themes." He says, "I don't believe for a minute that users will enjoy assembling their own website designed from a gazillion style selections and patterns." That's kind of exactly what I'm trying to get. If you just give endless choice, you're asking everybody to be a designer.
Exactly. Yeah.
And they're not. These. So yeah, I don't know what the future of themes is, and I don't know if they're going to be called themes or if they're going to be called design presets, or I don't know, but we're going to need them. We've covered that before, but I think, yeah, it's interesting now as well for us, like building something and delivering something for a client. Like, what are we delivering? It's because we used to kind of say we'll deliver you a theme and some plugins, but we already know that a lot of the work we're going to do is going to be like saved in the database, so it kind of changes our whole workflow and what it is that we deliver. It's not a plugin. Oh, sorry, it's not a zip file, or just a collection of CSS files. It's this whole kind of mishmash of some of that, some theme JSON stuff, some patterns, some global style presets saved in the database. I don't know. It's changed.
Saved in the database is kind of an interesting point, because I think we're going to talk about how we're going to go about building websites for small enterprises, this school, for example, in a second. So we'll come back to that. People have put some comments in the chat. So it would probably be good to get to some of those. Isaac says, in my opinion, the real value themes will be those who can provide better tooling in responsive design and utility classes. I don't quite understand that. The real value for themes will be those who can provide better tooling in responsive design and utility classes.
Tom
says he agrees, but I don't quite understand that. Sorry.
I'm not entirely sure, but I can. And this comes back to something I think I've spoken about before. Like, because we don't have responsive controls, but we've got all these other kind of spacing controls and things like that. Like, what I used to do for clients is that I make sure that any blocks, as far as possible, any blocks and combination of blocks that are used on a page work responsively. Whereas if you're just building patterns with the site editor, you don't have any real control over what happens on smaller screen sizes. You just let the kind of core styles take care of that. And obviously they don't always do a particularly good job. So maybe Isaac's saying there that good themes will take care of some of those, maybe their patterns will be more responsive, or they'll help with the core block responsive behavior. I'm not exactly sure.
Cameron, thank you, said the struggle comes from that you're running an agency and the site editor is built for the Wix market without any consideration on how agencies operate. It antithesis your entire workflow. You'll have to tell me what antithesis means because I don't know. But
like the complete opposite. Like,
right, okay,
kind of like the enemy of, but not quite the enemy of.
That's an interesting point, because actually we'll find this out, I think, over the course of this project, because I think before I started, I kind of agree with you. Like, it's, why would you want to give all this control? And I kind of get you, but it will be interesting to see what we can do with it. And is it actually, are we going to come out the other end thinking, wow, that's really good, that was a really positive thing to be able to give to the client? Or is it going to be that sort of same sort of approach that you're, or thoughts that you're having? We'll see what happens. Sam makes a good point. Thanks, Sam. What is the difference between building a theme and a website?
Yeah.
That's a good question. I think a theme isn't all the functionality that the plugins provide. I think that's how I would say it. So the website is the whole thing. The plugins combined interacting with the theme to present the information on the front end, which is then styled. I think that's what we mean by that.
Yeah.
But good question. What else have we got here? So business growth ready says patterns sound like word art from the 80s on pop.
Yeah.
Yeah,
they're pretty. Some of them are pretty bad.
yeah. So yeah, we'll see how that. I know a lot of these themes like Ollie and Powder and Studio and Rockbase and list all the ones that I've forgotten. They all come with patterns, don't they? A lot of them.
Mm-hmm.
And some of them come with a lot of patterns. And I guess the fact that they're coming with those themes means that they are curated. Is that the right word for those themes? So you don't get that just like drop in from somewhere else and it doesn't work with the other things around it type thing. I think that's what they're trying to achieve. Excuse me.
Yeah, exactly. And that makes sense to me. Is a theme without patterns and templates for me is just some typographic and color presets. Like, what else is it? It's not that useful.
And this question from Ashley Redmond may be a silly question, but what would be wrong with creating a theme that disables all the default blocks and comes with custom blocks? Too much effort for the pounds, or
people do it.
Interesting. People do it. I've seen people do it. Someone, was it Jamie Marsland, Poodle Press, posted out about the fact that NASA's website is built using the block editor. And when I actually went to read the case study, they've got like 50 custom blocks that they built for stuff that when you look at them, you think, why have you built a custom block? So I suspect the reason for that is because they want more control and they don't want they want those custom blocks because they do specific things and they only want you to do those specific things.
Yeah.
Be interesting to see. To be fair, I think they did post to a YouTube video, which was a WordCamp talk on it, which I haven't had time to watch actually, but apparently that was a good video to chat about why those decisions were made like that, which is good. Well, that kind of brings us on to building sites and what we're going to sort of learn from it. And this was sort of comes up with a discussion I was having on Twitter about something that's really basic, but like something that we're going to have to learn. How is the best way to do this in a block editor, Gutenberg full site editing world? And I used a very simple example of like button styles. So most websites, this one included, is going to have buttons, and it's probably going to have a number of different styles of button. Think primary button, large, think secondary button, smaller, think maybe a button with an outline, inverted colors. You're going to have several variations of buttons. Now, obviously, if you give the user the controls to create those buttons so that they can set them up with the right colors, then they put those on all the pages. But then if you say, oh, actually, we've made a mistake, our button border width is 2 pixels, not 1 pixel, there's no mechanism for then going and updating those across the whole site. So my question was, how best is it to give the client control in the editor to add buttons and so forth? And I'm just using buttons as an example. It could be headings, it could be paragraphs, it could be images, it doesn't matter. But allow them to change those button styles in the editor. So if we need to add 2 pixels border instead of 1, we can do it in the WordPress editor rather than in something else. And how can we globally update those styles across all the pages where those instances are used? And we got some very interesting discussions. So I kind of put forward in a little video, I saw there was 3 ways to do this. There was set it up in the global styles, which is essentially theme JSON. Basically say, hey, this is what a button looks like. There was create block styles for buttons. So you just click a button that says primary and it applies a class. We style the class. You've got your style button. And there was possibly like a synced pattern override for every button. So you'd add a synced pattern that is overridable so that the client could edit the text and the link. But if they couldn't edit the colors, and you'd do like a primary, a tertiary, a secondary, an inverted one, and all sorts. And then if you want to change that global, you just go and change the pattern and it will push it out globally. So they all have their benefits and downsides. The downsides of using the global styles or the theme JSON is that you're only actually styling a default button. So when you drop a button on the page, it would look like this, but that's it. However, if the person editing the website doesn't make any extra changes to that, if you changed theme JSON or global styles, they would get updated across the board. So that's good. But you can only do one button. With what was the other one? The middle one I said. Block styles. Yeah, that's good. But as soon as they start to make changes with the other controls that they have, oh, I fancy a bit of extra padding on this, or I'll make this one blue or whatever, then you lose control of that global updating because they come out of that block style. So that's a difficult one. And then the sync pattern overrides. This still sounds like a good idea to me. The big downside is that it's all saved in the database, so you can't really version control or anything like that. And Frank, who was jumping in to discuss this with me, said that was a bad idea. It seems in my head to be a good idea, apart from the fact that it's saved in the database.
I don't like the UI for it particularly either, but
that's an also slightly downside. Yeah, it would appear though when you choose a block, if you give it a name like primary high-rise button, it would appear if you type /button, so you would see it. Anyway,
you would see it, but you'd also see the buttons block, and I think that would be confusing.
Correct. Could you remove the buttons block from the inserter, though? These are all questions I don't know the answers to. So the buttons block is still hanging around in the background. You can use it, but you can't actually insert it into the pages. You have to insert one of the patterns, potentially, if that's possible. I don't know.
Yeah.
So I think the best way of doing this, and again, this is just an example for buttons, it might work for other things as well, is to go with block styles. So we create some block styles, and if you're not familiar with the block editor, that gives you a series of buttons essentially in the sidebar on the right where you select a style. And I think if you hover over it, shows you a little preview of what it's going to look like. And all that does is applies a class to the button block or your buttons block. And we then style it in the same way we would traditionally. You'd probably be enqueuing some sort of style sheet. You'd probably want to enqueue that with the block, so it's only loaded if the block is on a page, which there are tools to do so.
Only if that style is active would be great as well. But
I think you can probably do that.
I think you can. I think you can.
And then you'd start it with CSS. And the great thing about that is that then obviously you just update the CSS file, and then that updates across the board wherever that's been used. And then I think what we want to do, and this is the controversial is not the right word, is to hide all of the actual design settings for buttons. So you can't change the padding, the margin, the typography, etc., etc. Maybe you can choose the color. That's something we were discussing this morning, wasn't it? Maybe you get everything else styled with the styling, but the color is left up to the user, so you can change the text color and the background color.
Yeah.
But other than that, you turn everything off. The downside of that is that they can't create a custom button. But maybe that's a good thing. I'm not sure. So that's kind of where we are. Any comments come through about that you've seen?
Yeah, Nick agrees. He says block styles and disable the customization options.
Yeah, so I think that's probably the approach. And we were discussing, like, if you were the customer, would you be disappointed that you can't build your own stuff? You know what I mean? And I think we come to the conclusion, well, no, because that's what they're paying us to do, to get it right so they can't break it, almost.
Yeah. But, what would be really useful, and I'm sure it's going to come, but what we need to be able to do is create button styles in WordPress and save them as custom styles.
Precisely what Sam just says here. Yeah. The bigger question is, how is this even a problem? With 5 years into the project, why can't you style all the button styles and states in the editor?
Yeah, exactly.
It's a slightly different question, but
I want to be able to create a well, this raises other questions. So many things that you are never going to be able to create in the site editor that you can do with CSS, but there could be like an underline button. Like we've had button styles before, like primary, secondary, tertiary, arrow, underline, hollow, icon, inverted, like loads. But like, yeah, it would be cool to be able to create those, but you're not going to be able to create all of them. For example, arrow styles, I usually do that with CSS and an SVG, or maybe some pseudo elements to create the arrow, and then on hover the arrow kind of moves slightly to the side. You're never going to be able to do, like, I say never, maybe we will, but like, oh my god, imagine the user interface for that. But we can't create stuff like that. So I think part of the difficulty for us is that we're trying too hard to be too WordPress native, and we just need to like forget about it. Like, and I think with this project, initially we were going to be like, let's go like full site editor on it, but I just don't think we can, and actually I don't think we should. I think there's ways of doing things like locking down the buttons, like creating the button styles and locking down the customizations. I think we absolutely do that.
Which, just for those not aware, I'm pretty sure you can just do that with your theme JSON. Somewhere in that massive array of settings, you can say, hey, buttons don't have design controls. I don't know whether you do it separately and turn on each one off, or there's just a blanket, turn them off. I don't know, but you can do that, definitely.
Interesting, your suggestion about can we turn off certain customizations based on the style that's selected? Because initially I was like, I'm not sure that's that useful, but actually I've since thought, actually no, it is. I'm thinking, we've got an eyebrow style for the headings block on a lot of our projects, so it's usually like a uppercase small font size, like just sits above like a bigger title. We use that pattern a lot, and I saw on one of our client sites recently that they'd used that heading style but made the font size really big, and it just looked awful. So like when that font style is selected, it would be really cool to just disable the font size control. But you want that font size control generally for headings, but just not for that style. And I could force it with CSS just using important or whatever. But that's not a great user experience, because they'll be like, why is the font size not changing? But if you just remove the control, at least
control,
they kind of
that's what I'm saying. My idea behind that, I don't know whether we actually went into it, was that you use block styles because you want the ability to reskin those blocks across the board, which is what block styles give you. But if you were to select a block style, what you're sort of telling WordPress as an author of a page is that, hey, I want to use a button style for this, so I don't want to go rogue and build my own button with the design settings. So if you select a style, they would just disappear. But almost you say to the client, well, if you do want to do that, then I find myself sat here talking about that and thinking, well, we wouldn't want to do that, so we shouldn't be doing that. But if you do want to create your own button for whatever reason, don't select a style, and there are the controls that you can use them. That's what I was thinking about when I was doing that. So it's almost an interface that says, hey, I want to put a button on my page, and then you have something asking you, do you want a branded button that's been branded for you, and here's your choices, or
do you want to
build your own button?
Your site? Yeah.
Or do you want to destroy your site? So, and that doesn't really exist in WordPress at the moment, as far as I'm aware. So I think I think the best solution is a block style, which gives you a branded button, and then we just turn the customizations off, potentially leave text color and background color, and then they can pick from a palette for the colors. That might work, or we might just turn it off as well. We'll see.
Yeah,
we'll have a look at it. Anyway, that's good. That's good.
Yeah.
Couple of comments. So Ashley says, feels like a choice per project. I think they're talking about turning off the customization options and the level of flexibility you want to give. Yes, I do think for most projects we work on, though, the answer is going to be turn them off, because that's kind of what we're being asked to deliver. Stay on brand. Otherwise, you could just install WordPress and just do it all yourself. So I think I'm coming around to that idea more and more, which is interesting. Cameron says, I don't think removing customizations is a bad thing. Brand guidelines and style guides is this for a reason. The bigger problem is not having multiple categories of block styles. Yeah, the block styles interface is quite primitive. You can only apply one block style for a start, can't you? Yeah. So you can't do things like give me a primary button with an arrow. They'd be two styles, and then you can't select them both. So that becomes a little tricky. Yeah. And then Nick says, reality is that Gutenberg hasn't been conceived first and foremost for an agency client context. We have to bend it a bit one way or the other. And I think that's true. You were saying that this morning when we were having the chat, was like, you see lots of examples of people posting things about stuff that is all not really what agencies want to do. I think that Rich Tabor one was a good example. Like, our customers are never, ever going to want to suddenly decide that they want a yellow website and go, hey, I'll just make it yellow, and everything turns into a yellow site. It's just not really realistic for most agencies to be doing.
And that brings me on to one of the points I wanted to raise. It's exactly that there's a lot of really great people in the WordPress ecosystem that have been snapped up by Automatic, WP Engine being the two big ones, who maybe would have been people in the past who would have created content for people like us, or been a bit of a voice for people like us, but because they're now working at Automatic, and surprisingly WP Engine, like, I understand that the people that work at Automatic have a DIY website focus. They've got WordPress.com. The vast majority of WordPress users aren't people paying people like us to build them websites. I get that. We were discussing earlier, but it is a bit weird for WP Engine. I would have thought that the WP Engine market, so people like Brian Gardner, would maybe focus more on helping people like us solve our problems. But that doesn't really seem to be the case to me. So shout out to Justin Tadlock, though, and the team at the developer blog, because they are putting out really good stuff. But the problem with them, again, is that they are Automatic employees, like Justin is. And I just feel like there'll never be a kind of... I feel like we need a true advocate for SME website builders at Automatic, or like somewhere at the top table.
When the decisions are made for these features,
Well,
you mean?
I think that's important. When the decisions are made, I think that's important. But we also need people creating content for us and creating features for us. The stuff that is really important. And maybe that does happen, but I just don't feel like it's enough. We're enough of the conversation.
You know what?
Because I'm selfish and I'm thinking about myself and thinking about my business and my clients. But
you know what all the people you just mentioned are going to say to you, don't you?
Do it yourself. Get involved.
Do it yourself. Why don't you be the person that delivers all this content and this?
Yeah. Well, we have.
We're trying, but we don't know
I think with this next project, we haven't made any kind of solid commitment, but like, I think we both want to use this as a proper kind of case study, as in, and share what we're going to learn. Like, we've set it up in this way because for these reasons we built this particular part of the website in this way. This is how it works. This is the tech we used. These are the pros and cons of that approach. It would be great if there was, I think like Carolina's close with the fullsiteediting.com. Frank Klein's got his WP development courses website. So there are some good resources out there.
Frank is great, but he very much seems to be sat on the enterprise side.
Yeah.
For the higher budgets, I think. Whereas we're not on that, we can't make some of those decisions that they make because of budgets and timescales and other things. So I think that's slightly different, but definitely loads of good content. And I'll be looking through his Block, I think it's called Block Academy course, which is kind of like refreshers on all this stuff about the block editor and full site editing and stuff, which is going to be some good stuff. So definitely be looking.
I also know that Frank's next newsletter is relevant to our conversation today. So if you're not part of his newsletter, sign up. He'll be talking about themes, the future of. So
I assume sign up. If you follow him on Twitter, there'll be some sort of link to some sort of newsletter sign up that you can find somewhere. Just I'm sure that'll be the
look
case.
for Frank Klein, I think, or go to, is it WP Development? Let me is that wpdevelopment.courses. I'm sure there's probably a newsletter. So there is. The newsletter's on there. So go and definitely go and check that out because he puts out some good stuff. Yeah, like the person I always think of from more recent times was like Bill Erickson. So like just pre-Gutenberg, I'd just read his blog all the time about how to do certain things. And I was like, and then Rich was doing a bit just before he went to Automatic. And like, but I feel like that's lacking a little bit at the moment. I don't think we're the right people to do that. But we'll give it a go.
We'll try and put some content out based on this project. And who knows, you might all come back and tell us it's the wrong way to do it, but then at least we'll have learned. So that'd be good.
Yeah, this is a conversation. It would be cool. I could just imagine some kind of like a wiki of some kind that people could contribute to, and like so you could just go on to how do I add FAQs to a WordPress website? How do I add a meet the team page to a WordPress website? And then there'd be various ideas and best practices.
Do you know what would be really useful actually? If you are listening, watching, and you do what we do, you build sites for smaller, SMEs. What are the questions that you have about building in the more modern full site editing way? Similar to my buttons question a minute ago. Not a complicated thing, just simple things of how do you do those sorts of things? Because it'd be good to get a real big collection of those, and then us or anyone listening and watching can try and answer those somewhere, and then we'd have a bank of stuff to look for maybe. But it'd be nice to get what are people's concerns? What are the things that they think? I used to do that this way, but if I'm using full site editing, I can't do that this way. But it's really, really important, and therefore, how do I do it? That sort of question. Be interesting to see.
My main worry going forward, and one that we're going to have to tackle, and the synced overridable patterns or whatever they're called, hopefully will help, is how when a client has built a crap load of pages and posts using the patterns and blocks and whatever that you've delivered, how you can change those in the future whilst maintaining the content? That's so critical, because we had it recently, didn't we? One of our clients was like, yeah, we just want to revisit like how we do case studies. And what do you mean? It's like, well, it's a certain layout. We've got like hundreds of case studies. We want to change the layout. It's like, you can't. You go and change each one individually, because there's no central place where that case studies layout template is controlled. So it's stuff like that's the real challenge, I think, with the modern. I don't even want to say the modern way, because modern means different things to different people. Sometimes some people think using twig and timber or whatever is the modern way, or sage and roots and whatever is the modern way. But I'm talking about like the kind of native default WordPress. That's my biggest worry with it.
Yep. We've done 40 minutes, so I think we should wrap this up. And we'll have another chat about it next week, no doubt, or something similar. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us here on YouTube and on X, if you're on X. This does go out as a podcast basically when Keith can export it and send it out, so hopefully very soon. We are aware, by the way, that this wasn't working in Apple Podcasts for the last few episodes. I think we found the solution, so we'll try and rectify that if you were watching or trying to listen on Apple Podcasts, but we'll get to that later. But once again, thanks for listening. If you've enjoyed this video, please give it a like. Subscribe if you're not subscribed, and then you'll get to hit the bell and you'll get the notifications for the next one. But until next week, or the next time we're on here, thank you very much, and we'll see you then.
See you soon.